Hodgie, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me again, guys.
Did you see much of the Hawthorn game, Hodgie?
I was there.
Oh, yeah, that's what I asked. Did you see much of it?
Yeah, I did radio prior and then went and sat with a few mates and watched most of it. Tell you what, it was pretty good to watch, not going to lie. It was Gunners' 250th and Jack's a big, boring person when it comes to goal celebrations.
Okay.
So we made sure we let him know that we had to get something from him. So he actually pointed to us a couple of times. He kicked 3 goals in his 250th, and the 2014 guys that were celebrating the premiership, it was great football to watch.
Who was in the best form, Hodgie?
Very well behaved, Kane. So
Really?
what the guys did, because we didn't have a big supporter function this year. We'll do that next year. It was more of the guys went and saw a lot of different groups prior to the game. So you really had your first beer just as the ball was getting bounced. So everyone was in control. No one was badly behaved. We had enough last year, and we'll save that to next year.
Yeah. Did the coach show his face? He would have been in a good mood.
No, it didn't see. There was probably 15 because it's a Saturday. Middle of the day. There was blokes that were coaching. I know Lakey was striving his hardest. He had to coach. There was a lot of guys that couldn't quite get there. I think Clarko was away with his with North Melbourne having the bye. Because I know last year he popped up to have a couple of beers with us, but couldn't get there with there was probably about 15 to 16 in total out of the group.
Well, you would have had great memories, but it would have been fantastic just watching the re-emergence of the Hawks, who were flat early in the season under some serious pressure. The man Kane anointed the genius was certainly under the pump, but he's been genius-like in recent weeks.
Yeah, well, I actually thought Kane would have brought him up, considering they're best friends now, those two. There's a lot of love in that room whenever those two are talking between one another. But no, I think you're right. I think the way Mitch has tried to build it, and everyone starts to build a side different. Mitch last year was building on attack.
Yep.
He wanted to go as fast as he possibly could, and if the opposition scored 120, then he was going to score 130. And I think that's the way they drafted. They needed a key defender. They went and got Watson, who's a 5'0" half forward, but I know he kicked 4 goals in the seconds, and if Mitch can move the ball in a fast manner, he'll get it down to Watson and Ginnivan and these younger guys with a bit of spark. So that's how he started. But what he has done since then is he's introduced the defensive structure. He's introduced little tweaks of their game style, which it's slowly starting to come all come together. But in saying that, they're only year 2 or 3 of a big build-up, and it's still going to take a number of years before they're going to really push into a top 4. But what I did see on Saturday, yes, Adelaide probably went up to their standards, but what I did see was really exciting. Dylan Moore was outstanding. He had 27, kick 5. The selfless mindset, I'm not sure if it was because it was Jack's 250th, but every time they went inside forward 50, they weren't they did a little bit later when the game was won, but they were looking to pass it off, and they look for Jack a lot. They look for other teammates. They look like a real selfless bunch, which with young guys, they don't normally have that mindset early in the season or early in their careers.
Is it confronting North spoke about this when they played Hawthorn, like the performance has to be better because you're playing against teams that should be in a similar position. Like for Adelaide, they're 3 years ahead in this rebuild. Hawthorn essentially 2 years into it, Hodgie, yet they got destroyed at the MCG, a ground that they can't win. That must be a bit confronting for them.
I think so, especially the way it happened. They got dominated in that first quarter. And I would have liked to see him throw a little bit different mix into the midfield. And I know, like Rankin, a couple of years ago, I thought Rankin was just a small half forward. He's shown the what he could do when he goes into the midfield. He clearly did his hamstring. He's out. But Rochelle last year went into the middle 140 times. So they rated his inside work. This year they swapped it for Rankin. They prefer Rankin in there, which is fair enough because Rankin's a gun. But Rankin's out injured, and Rochelle goes in there twice on the weekend to a team that got belted by the Hawks in the centre bounces. Lost by 18 to 10.
Yeah, I agree with you because I think he stagnated Rochelle, and I think he needs an opportunity to blossom again.
You're spot on. That's a perfect thing. He's playing as a high half forward, and I don't care who you are. You go through certain patches, and what players like that need is they need a bit of flexibility from the coach. Yes, he might not be as good as Rankin, so you put Rankin in there, but you still got to give him a little bit of life. On the weekend was a prime opportunity to throw in a bit of speed, a bit of spark to change things up. And they kept with the same. I think Saligo had 20-odd, Crouch had 20, Dawson had 16. It was the same 3 that was spent a lot of time in there, and clearly it wasn't getting the job done as it wasn't early in the year. I know they've taken Laird out, but I don't know. I felt to try and help out Rochelle a little bit and have a little bit of a different look in the middle, which may have unsettled the Hawks, but they sort of had it their own way the whole game.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with that. What happens when you tag for the first time? It would have happened to you. I've certainly done it to players who have had no experience with being tagged, and it's good when that happens. But for Harley Reid to cop it this early on in his career would have been a learning curve for him, one that he didn't cope with that well. What would your advice be to him?
Speak to your older guys and get help. One thing you do when you're a younger player, and look, this kid's getting it in his first year. I think the first time I got tagged was probably year 3 or 4. I did not know what to do. I'd try to fight the player. I'd give away free kicks. And back then you could probably do it without giving away free kicks. They've got 4 umpires. They look for everything. They're looking for Reid because he's the standout player there. But if you're not used to it, you react in a different way, and you're unsettled, and you try and fight back, and you try and show he's a physical beast. So he's trying to show his strength. Sometimes it's not about showing your strength. And I wish I'd have learnt this early in my career. It's about showing your smarts and using and getting help off your teammates. Sometimes it's about starting on the wing and swapping inside. Sometimes it's about starting on the inside of the corridor and swapping out to a wing, so then your wing is free on the inside. And all of a sudden, it's not about the tagger just worrying about you. Because if that winger that you've stopped with has got 3 clearances in a row, guess what? You're starting to call the tagger selfish because he's more worried about you than the team. You've got to change things up just so that the tagger has got more than just one job to focus on. And that's look, this is a kid in his, what's he played, 10 games? This is a kid in his 10th game, which he's going to get it a lot more. But I would hope that a Yo or a Callie or someone there, or even Simo. Simo would have got tagged when he was older. Go and sit with him and work a few different tactics, like working with blokes in and around your high half forward who comes up maybe to release you jump out, throw a few different things to the midfielder because, Kane, as you know, you get rated on you stopping that bloke.
Yep.
If the midfield lose, it's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to shut down that midfielder, and that is it. So ask for your teammates to get a bit of help. That's the only way you can sort of get around it.
Yeah, I think Simo let him down to a fair degree because he's a clear straight to the goal square. Let's go and see how the tagger operates as a fullback.
I hated that.
Yeah.
I guess the opposing view is that you got to let him work through it a little bit. Like so,
but he's been there for a quarter and hadn't touched it.
Yeah, so that's the time. So not straight away. Don't let him try and work through it and get the better and use his strength against Windhager, who he's bigger. And at that stage, West Coast were on top. But once it doesn't work, 100% go forward. And I didn't like doing that because Windhager can't defend either, can he?
Yeah, with that as well, Kane, you got to try and let him fight through it. But sometimes kids don't have the skills to handle that, and you get reported, give away free kicks, you hurt the team. Sometimes it's a duty of the coach, it's a duty of the senior player to go and mention it to the coach. So, mate, he's struggling out there, he's getting frustrated, his body language is not great. Can we help him out? Can we send him to do a 2v1 on someone else? Can we send him forward, as you said? Because we know he can kick a goal, we know he can take an overhead mark. He was All-Australian at full forward last year at under-18s. I just felt this is a learning curve for him, and he's only going to get better from it. Yes, he got suspended. Yes, he gave away some free kicks. But this is a learning curve, and I hope the senior people at West Coast can give him a bit of a chop out and start to work with him. Don't let him find out himself.
Hodgie, how are we to react to top sides and bottom sides for that matter? We had 2 on the weekend, Adelaide and Melbourne, that turn up with no energy and just look flat, disinterested and uncompetitive.
Yeah, well, Melbourne's a tough one. I'm sort of sitting here going, I know it happened against West Coast 2 weeks ago, but I've not seen Melbourne look that bad for a long period of time. And you look through, like when I picture Melbourne, we all know they've got the mid-forward connection. That's been their flaw for a number of years. What they haven't had a flaw in was contested possession. What they haven't had a flaw is centre bounce clearances or clearances in general. What they haven't had a flaw in is their stable defence. And if you look at what Melbourne were able to do, Melbourne beat them by 22 to 10 out of centre bounce. They beat them by 25 at clearances. The transition that Fremantle, and we've spoken openly on all areas this year, Fremantle aren't a flary side. They don't move the ball fast. They don't punish punish opposition. They punish Melbourne. Their flair with the ball, their excitement, they had 142 marks. It shows me that Melbourne weren't there to man up. They weren't there. And that's what I'm sitting here going, do we give them a bit of a leeway? Because it's not the Melbourne that we've seen in the past. And when Melbourne has produced, if they have produced one like that, I fear for the team the following week. So if I'm Collingwood, I'll be coming in ready to play because Melbourne very rarely embarrass like that 2 weeks in a row.
When do you know that the golden era is over, or do you ever know? Like when did it hit you that okay, we've had a great run here, and not suggesting that Melbourne had the success that Hawthorn did, but they've been up the top for a while now and won a premiership. It looked as though Hodgie that it was coming to an end now with the players that they've lost, the lack of depth, the lack of energy, ageing stars? Is it at that level yet for the D's, do you think?
As a player, it hits you a lot faster than it does as a coach.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. And Clarko, in our era, I think after 2015, Clarko came to Mitch, myself, Gibbo and Sean Burgoyne and said, look, we're going to start to phase you guys out because we don't want everyone leaving at the same time. So in his mind, he's like, well, we don't want to fall off the cliff. We want to bring in new people to keep growing and have another shot at a premiership. In 2017, that got thrown out the window. We got belted about the first 5 or 6 games, and we realised then. So as a player, we realised about round 5 that, oh, hang on, maybe we're not as good as what we used to be. We better start developing for the future. That can creep up on you. And Melbourne, by the look of it, Melbourne have been up there for a long period of time. From what Melbourne, their wins and losses over the last 4 years were no different to Hawthorn's, apart from in finals. We were able to get a couple of close wins, which got us into a premiership opportunities. But those 3, 4, 5 years, if you don't capitalise on those opportunities, you're going to soon fall off a cliff. And unless you're Sydney or Geelong, it happens pretty fast.
And what about clubs who are really good at home and can't win away? And that's most clubs, unless you're in premiership mode. But there's so much pressure, and I guess the Suns are the point in case at the present time. The Crows are another one point in case. But you look back on history, and it's almost the best indicator that you're in premiership contention when, if you're an interstate side, you're winning at home on a regular basis. You're winning away on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think with that is we always used to have a goal that if you're not making the top 4, it's very hard for you to win the premiership. I know that Bulldogs did it in 2016. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Has anyone else won it since then? I don't think
Not
so.
under
Outside
this
the
system.
top 4.
Not under
no.
this
So,
system.
and that was the goal that we had. You win enough games to get the top 4. That's the first barrier. First of all, you got to get into the finals. But if you're going to be a premiership contender in our mindset, in our goals, you had to finish top 4 because you get your double chance. You can freshen up and go from that. And the whole point of winning enough games is you got your 11 games at home. And then you have to win your 5 or 6 or 7 away just to give you that 16, 17, 18 wins to get you in there. So any team who think they're just going to use a home ground advantage to get you into that top 4 to put you into that category, you're dreaming. You've got to be as good away as you are at home to give yourself the best opportunity.
Are you willing to write any of the teams off, Hodgie? Like down to probably the Saints, really, in terms of if you look at the ladder. Like I don't think Port Adelaide are good enough to win it. For instance, I would have my doubts on Geelong with their recent form. It's hard to go all in and say they can't win it with a season as even as this. But is there anyone you're watching that going, yeah, I just don't have any confidence?
Let's go
that they
through
can
them.
win it. Okay.
Crows,
Out.
Lions.
I still think the Lions are. If the Lions can get their centre forward game going, so if you think differential, the Lions are number 1, getting the ball inside forward 50. But what it is, their connections dropped away. And their opportunities with their goal kickers haven't been kicking straight. So if they can tidy up that part of the game, they can beat anyone, as we've seen. So I wouldn't put a line through them, but tell you what, they're leaving it very close, only having 4 wins at this stage.
Kane?
Not too far back. And look, they may sneak into the 8, but I think what Hodgie has said about top 4, particularly when you're an interstate side with the injuries that they've got, it's going to be
too early for Hawthorn. Western Bulldogs?
They can get close.
Yeah. Hodgie?
They need to get there. I think they're missing 6 of their top 9 goal kickers this week. So they're in a similar position as Collingwood. Their list is starting to really hurt them.
Melbourne?
I'm going to say no, just the fact that forward connection. We've seen them play some really good football. And as I said before, midfield and defence are outstanding. That connection centre forward about scoring and what you need to win finals these days, you need to kick over 100 points. And Melbourne struggled to do that.
Collingwood?
I think they can. They were enormous on Friday night. The last 2 weeks, the challenges they've got. The problem is they're going to be just so up against it. It's a shame because I think back-to-back is there for them.
Gold Coast, Hodgie?
No.
Giants?
Yes.
Fremantle?
No.
Not gonna go one. Not rolling them out.
Okay. Carlton?
Yes.
I've got issues with their ball movement. Yes, they're going to be capable.
Tell us more about that.
They've got an excellent midfield. They've got an excellent defence and forward. But when a team gets set up against them, I find that they find it really hard to transition the ball. And if you look at Port Adelaide in the weekend, Kane, how did Port Adelaide move the ball?
Fast.
Quick. What happens when you move the ball fast?
Yeah, you give one-on-one opportunities to your forwards, but it's high risk, high reward.
Exactly right. If you turn the ball over, you cannot zone the ground. You cannot man up and squeeze holes. And that gives Carlton, as I said, Carlton have a good, like they got Wiedering, they got some good defenders who can win a battle. If you give a team like Carlton a chance to pick your way through your midfield, which hasn't had time to squeeze up, you're going to put pressure on your defence. And Carlton have got a really good forward line. So if a good smart team plays against Carlton, I wouldn't be moving the ball fast because you just open it up there.
So if Fremantle played Carlton, you'd have more confidence with their ball movement and almost defending when they've got the ball in their hands.
You can move the ball fast, but it's got to be smart. It's got to be composed. The ball can still go quick, but it doesn't have to be handball, kick, it's got to be kick and then a bit of handball receive once you get centre forward to get the ball deep. I wouldn't mind Freo against Carlton if that was the case, just the way they build up the ball.
Port Adelaide.
No.
Geelong Cats. Third on the ladder, amazing.
Yeah, I said no last week. I just think their midfield is...
Danger's coming back.
I know, but come up against Sydney or the Giants or Carlton.
Well, they're up against Sydney next week.
Absolutely destroyed in the midfield.
Essendon?
I would have put my hand up 3 weeks ago and said 100% for Geelong.
Same.
But as you said, their top end, as soon as their top end drops away, Hawkins are starting to look a little bit older, looking shakier for their depth.
Well, what about the Bombers?
I don't know.
Not convinced.
You got anyone, Hodgie?
I've got Sydney. I tipped Sydney at the start, and that's all I've got. All I'm saying is that I want to be convinced more. Like, so Essendon went up to Gold Coast. If they're a premiership opportunity, they should have beaten Gold Coast.
It's only accuracy that costs them. I think the Bombers have got a long time to improve.
I reckon they're playing a lot better football, but I want to see that against some big teams, against some big games before I'm going to say yes, 100%. I'm saying I'm putting down are they my favourites? I'm saying I reckon I'll have 2 or 3 that are yes, but I just reckon these two have got to prove a little bit more than what they do at the moment.
I think what you've said is fair. Essendon don't look like a premiership winning team. As much as they've been impressive, they're on the right track. If they can win a final, amazing. But
the way you guys have painted this, I've actually got Sydney playing no one in the
You've got
AFL.
Sydney playing already home.
I think you've got Sydney playing Brisbane coming from
I said
nowhere.
Collingwood, I said GWS, I said Carlton if they play against a team who lets them move the ball.
No, you got a few.
You got the horse on the TV tonight?
Got the horse on Footy Classified.
Can you let him know that he's already got the cup and Hodge is going to turn up?
Hodgie's handed them the cup already. Hey, what's the numbers you've got on the Saints and in particular Max King?
Look, Max King it would be hard playing in that St Kilda side, just the way they've moved the ball. They're a young team, top end talent wise, it's not quite there. But the difference St Kilda looked when King was off the field compared to King on the field, and who replaced him was Wood. So, and you look through and you go, well, he's tall, but he's not overpowering. But it was just so the time that Max King was on, and sorry about all these stats, but I sort of went through just to see if I had an inkling with it. But the time that Max King was on, which was 3 quarters, 2.5, 3 quarters, they went inside 30 times. To when he was off, which was about 50 minutes, they went in 22. Their scoring percentage was 33% when he was on, 55% when he was off. They impacted the score. They were down by 3 points when he was on. They were plus 17 when he was off. And pressure, this is a big one. When he was on the ground, their forward half pressure was about 180 rating, which is just below average. They jumped up to 203 when he went off. And then you look through, King took no marks inside forward 50 and Wood took 3. So I'm sort of sitting here going, does a centre-half forward position, remember the old Nick Riewoldt workhorse, take the mark up on the wing, roll round into a smaller, agile forward line, does that work better for St Kilda? Because I know they played West Coast, but they were doing a really good job with King playing deep full forward, and then you've got Wood playing full forward, and they didn't know where they were going. He pops up, kicks 3 in the last quarter, 4 for the game, takes his marks, took 8 marks for the game. I know it just looked more dangerous having not that vocal point where every defender knew where they were going to go because King was the deepest majority of the time.
We've been saying this for a while, Gerard, haven't we? They've got to allow him to play with some more freedom.
Yeah, up the ground.
Get up the ground, and then reset and go deep. But I think
his brother did it pretty well.
Yeah, and he's an excellent mark down the line, and I think it gets him into the game more. We see Curnow do it, we see his brother do it, we see Harry Mackay do it at times. Be that target down the line, and then you can be a little bit more unpredictable. But it's whether it's his endurance, whether they're worried about his durability up the ground or work rate or cooking him, I don't know. But
you don't have to do it the whole game. No. It's push him up for 15, 10 minutes and then bring him off for a break. Like the amount people rotate these days, it's to give him a little bit of X factor and just give him a different look. I don't know, you sort of have a look at the comparisons between the two, and they look so much more damaging with a smaller, more agile forward line.
The one thing you did remind us, though, is just how good a player Mason Wood has become under Ross Lyon at St Kilda. He was borderline All-Australian last year. I think he was in the squad, Kane. I'm not quite sure, but he was one of the best wingmen in the game for the year, got injured early this season and has come back and has really influenced the results.
Hodgie?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to Kane. There's no doubt about it. The fact that I think his flexibility as well, because I remember when he was playing at North Melbourne, he'd be on the half-forward line, but he was sort of hit and miss. He was hesitant and tried to stay out of the road of the forwards, and then he went to the half-back line. When they moved him to the wing, he had someone who had a really good overhead mark, but he understands the game really well. If you watch the patterns that he runs as a winger, he knows where to slide back, and because of his height, can take those marks. But he added a lot more than I thought on the weekend. He actually looked like a normal, like a really good forward. I know he played a lot there at North Melbourne, but he's running patterns, he's set shot at goal. He's a beautiful kick, but his overhead mark, he took a hanger as well in that last quarter. I know it just showed that you're right that he's got his best football out of Ross.
They got nothing for him either, North. I mean,
it's a giveaway.
But basically delisted him.
It was a showbag
pretty
giveaway.
Pretty handy at North. A lot of text coming through. How about some praise for Windhager? We did praise Windhager before Hodgie came on. I said excellent coaching, and his execution was about as good as it gets. 3 touches in the last half was, regardless of how many games Harley Reid has played, he was on fire and he completely put him to sleep.
Yeah, Hodgie's in the building up in Queensland, and Kane's gone off to Footy Classified to interrogate John Longmire. So Adam White has come off the bench, he's taken off the subs vest, and he's got hold of the microphone. Welcome to you, Hodgie. Whitey.
Thank you, Gerard, and thank you, Hodgie. Last time I was speaking to Hodgie on the radio, I declared Melbourne were going to win the premiership. So to actually come in tonight was really a bad piece of timing.
I actually didn't let you. I didn't let down on you either, did I?
No, you
I
didn't.
Gave you no breathing room.
No. Gerard and I were just talking about it off air, just with some of the things that we saw from Melbourne, from senior players, and there was a lot of arguing with each other. There was a lot of really poor body language from leaders. It was quite dramatic in a lot of ways to see it unravel the way it did.
Are you going to tip Melbourne to beat Collingwood?
Oh, my word, I am.
In the slide? Hodgie, who are you tipping?
Melbourne are beating Collingwood. And for the Collingwood people out there, just because I tip
You
Melbourne
hate
doesn't mean I
Collingwood.
don't like. Here we go. I had to go when they drew against Fremantle last week because I had to go about a deliberate.
Yeah.
You hated Collingwood.
Yeah, no, you hate Collingwood.
I'm backing Melbourne this week.
You're backing the rebound.
Look, as we've said, Melbourne for 4 years have been a consistent, hard-nosed football team. And what I saw last weekend, and I think a little bit goes down to, I don't think Oliver, since he's had his hand operation, I don't think he's sort of bounced back
he's
to the
been
play that
flat.
he has just yet. If you look through 2023, last year he averaged 30 touches, 7 clearances. 2022 averaged 32, 8.5 clearances. 2021 averaged 31 and 7.5 clearances. Since he had his hand, on the weekend he had 19 touches and 4 clearances. Since he's had his hand, he's averaged about 22, 23 touches. So it's knowing what he's like, he's as hard as nails. He wouldn't be saying that his hand's affecting him at all. But it's shown that the standard he's normally up to, he just hadn't been able to get back to that since that hand operation.
Can I ask you about the one of the other topics of the day, and that's eligibility for the Rising Star? But I think it's much bigger than that. I think it's eligibility for the Brownlow. I remember writing a column in Herald Sun 10 years ago about it and arguing it on radio. But the fairness element of the Brownlow was for punching, elbows, biting, gouging, squirrel gripping, spitting, and the like, Hodgie. It was not about tackles gone wrong. And this year, ironically, we've got multiple people who have been found guilty of punching, and they would have got a suspension 5 years ago plus. Multiple players of backhanders and even soft elbows, if we can put it in those terms, and yet they're eligible to win the Brownlow, and yet we've got half a dozen people now lined up who've got tackles gone wrong, and there's some brutal tackles that shouldn't be rewarded, but there's some, like the one we saw on the weekend, that to me it seems ridiculous that he's ineligible, and the rules need to change.
Well, to be honest, it never really fazed me, that side of things, because in my mind it was always, if you're reported, you're ineligible and you move on from it. But I think and I got interviewed from Eddie Corns, Kane's son, yesterday. He's a hard, he's a hard hitting.
I wonder where he got that from.
Tell you what, he's gone in about, is Ken Hinkley the right coach for Port Adelaide? Is Adelaide soft because of how they played? He's brought up stuff about Clark. I'm like, hang on, what's going on here? But, I know exactly where he got it from. But he mentioned that yesterday. He goes, should he still be eligible for Rising Star? And I'm like, well, yeah, he got suspended. But I think I've had time to look back. And you're spot on. We've changed the rules more so not about people being dirty. It's about we've changed the rules for the health and safety of players. So if they decide to do it, as you said, if there's anything that gets directed straight to the tribunal, which is a dirty bump or a big two-hand dump tackle where it knocks someone to the ground, you probably got a bit of merit, because I don't think, you look at Harley Reid's, I don't think that categorises him as a dirty player or as a filthy player. It was someone who, it was a man tackling a boy. That's what it looked like, and his own strength threw him over onto the ground. It's a fair point that you raised.
So, guys, it's like the fairest component of the Brownlow medal can still be in play if Harley Reid is suspended for that sort of thing, because it's not like it's a crude act. And if the game is changing as it is to protect the player out on the field, I think the rules and regulations around things like Rising Star or Brownlow need to change with the times as well. So you've got a football act, and then you've got essentially an idiot act.
I notice Laura Kane's comfortable with it again, and she's not going to change it, and the AFL aren't going to change it in the future. But this is something the Commission need to address, because we're going to end up with a bloke who's going to miss the Brownlow, or even this one. I mean, the guy who comes in and wins the Rising Star, he's going to be almost apologetic.
You can't. He's out as well. He got reported for charging on Friday night.
Yeah.
Darcy.
So, I mean, Steve Bradbury gets up and wins the Rising Star, and he's going to feel apologetic, and it's to me, it needs addressing.
There is still half the season to go for a young player to really announce himself now.
Yeah, and there's still half a season for Sam Darcy and Reid to come back and just show who is the number one.
It could put Harley to whole new levels now. He'll have a real axe to grind when he comes back.
Yeah. Anyway, it's something that probably won't get changed because of the tradition, but I think sometimes tradition can hold you back. And I'm a big one for the traditions of the game, but this it's not right.
Hodgie, I've got one for you from Harley Reid. With the way he plays the game, he almost plays the game the way you played the game. A bit of an enforcer, would get in the face of the opposition, quite intimidating the way he goes about it. The difference is that you played 300 games and had 4 premierships. Harley's played about 10 games, but the way he can intimidate senior players of the opposition, have you ever seen that before from a player? And B, how would you react to that if you were out on the field and he was doing that to you?
Well, first of all, I remember hearing about him last year, and they said, he's a man among boys and he'll bully people, but let's wait and see what he's like until he gets into AFL standard. And that's why I thought the same. I thought, well, yeah, there's a kid you hear about all those man-childs that grow up and then they get to senior football and they stop growing and everyone else gets bigger than them. And I thought that might have been the same. I thought he might come up, he'll be stronger than all the other first-year kids, but give him a few years and he might be able to make an impact. How wrong I was. And you sort of look through it. I know everyone sort of said we haven't been able to compare him to anyone. Like Juddy come in with speed, but no one come in with this force. And you look back at a couple of weeks ago when they played Melbourne, he fended off Oliver and then ran at Petrarca. Petrarca's as strong a midfielder as that I've seen go through there. So, no, I think you're right. He's someone who he takes on the challenge, but he's got his strengths and he knows it and he uses it to his advantage.
Yes, it's been an unbelievable fill-up to the season, and it's a real pity that he's not going to be there for a couple of games, because all of a sudden now with the injuries to West Coast and the buy-off for North Melbourne, which gives them a chance to really set for this particular game, they're a chance, North Melbourne, possibly to get their first win of the season. It's very rare. I can't remember the last side that went through without a victory, Hodgie.
That's been a long time. But you sort of look back and I would have gave him no chance with Harley, but how could you say an 18 or 19-year-old kid that all of a sudden the door's open? Yo's playing some good football. They've got their backs are still standing up as well. But it is. I think at North Melbourne, we sit back going, we do have a sniff. Yes, we've got to travel over to Perth. They probably would have liked it down at Blundstone, down at Tassie, but it is a big trip. But I think they'll be going over a lot more confident that the fact that he's out of the game. I
know Clark will be monitoring the ins pretty closely, and I'm not sure what Tim Kelly missed with. But he was a big out because when they've only got one to tag, and they didn't want to tag Yo, they go to the kid. Tim Kelly would have got off the chain, but he didn't play.
No, you're right. He didn't. And as I said, that's the thing is their depth isn't quite there, but they're slowly getting it back.
Now, it's just come through that 1964 Fitzroy Lions were the last side to go through a full season without a win. That was in an era where there was only 18 games in a season. Though.
Right,
So they were going to come home
Even
hard.
even Fitzroy in their last year won one game against Fremantle at Western Oval. And
Okay, I'm going to throw it to you guys. Do you think North Melbourne will match that? Do you think North Melbourne will win a game this year?
If they don't beat West Coast, I don't think they will.
history says they will win a game because a team always seems to win a game. We've got to go back to 1964 for that to happen. So it will. I just think it will happen. I don't know who it'll be though.
What about you, Hodgie?
Hey, I asked you the question.
Yeah, well, I've given the answer.
I've got one. Yeah, sorry, you go, Hodgie.
Do North Melbourne get a chance to play West Coast down at Tassie? If we can get that one, if they played West Coast down at Tassie, I reckon it's a chance. But I think West Coast is going to be too strong from this week.
Okay, that'll be interesting.
I hope I'm wrong, just for the North Melbourne supporters.
You hate the Kangas.
Oh, jeez. Gerard, I've got one for you. You put out your 10 All-Australian locks that you think should be in there.
Was that last week or the week before? One or the other?
Last week. Is Sam Collins a chance?
Oh, he's absolutely a chance. I think he's number one rated player in defence. He got in front of McGovern this week.
And that's what you sort of look at. So we've spoken for years how good Langford's been. Langford, he's only been held scoreless, goalless. I think that was the fourth time in 2 years. One of those times he played fullback, which was round one. Yeah. The other two were against Port Adelaide earlier this year, where Essendon couldn't get the ball forward, and the other one was against Geelong last year. They had a lot of opportunities, and Collins was outstanding. And you look through what he's been able to do this year. He's kept Mackay and Larkey. Mackay's won the Coleman a couple of years ago. Larkey come third in the Coleman. Danaher he kept to 2. Fogarty, I know he's not as big a name, but still can hit the scoreboard, kept him goalless. I know it's just somewhere that Gold Coast are coming, and I know you mentioned Mac Andrew before. We've mentioned about their midfield. Collins has been such a stable person for them, and I think he's as big a reason as anyone as why he's pushed him into the top 8. Yeah,
his performance has been superb in the negative elements. I don't think he's in. Clearly, he's not in McGovern's distribution category by kicking the ball and generating play. It wouldn't surprise me if he was full back for the All-Australian side. My understanding, and this only comes through the jungle drums, is that there wasn't much love for McGovern in the All-Australian meeting. So we'll wait and see how that unravels, because I find that staggering given McGovern's form this season. Barras has been superb for the Eagles, but your man up north, he's the number one key defender, rated defender. Hoyne just texted through when I queried it. He moved in front of him this week. So it was a pretty handy week. And they're a growing side. I know they can't win away from home at the moment, but they've got a big opportunity this week.
It's not only that he's been able to nullify those key players, but he's also third for intercepts as well, which it got me by surprise. So that's why I always put down Collins. He's a negating defender, but he's been able to win back as just as many as, obviously, you got the stars in Sicily and these kind of blokes, but he's been able to do it two-way. And I know watching him on the weekend, I thought Langford just couldn't get near it. And for someone who Langford's been rated so highly as a forward the last 2 years, just really stood out.
Did you think the Bombers' forward line was too tall on the weekend, or was it just the midfield lack of class being able to hit a target?
Mind you, they had enough scoring shots. So I reckon if they had put the foot down early, it was almost like Collingwood on the weekend, on Friday night, sorry. If they had been able to kick straight, maybe the doggies start to hesitate and they don't play the same way. Maybe Gold Coast second-guess themselves, say, hang on, we're coming up against a big top 4 team. Essendon, are they the real deal? They're putting us under the pump. It just seemed like they didn't. They weren't as accurate, which gave Gold Coast a bit of belief, because you look through all the other stats. Essendon, I know they were all close, but they won contested possession, uncontested possession. They won clearances. They won inside 50s, but they just couldn't convert. And even though they had 4 more scoring shots, but 6 more shots in total, they had every opportunity to win that game.
So the question I've got for you before the break is, with what's happened with Sam Taylor. Now, you were talking before about Mac Andrew, Gerard, about how good he is. Is it got to a point now where key position defenders, particularly key position intercept defenders, have become more important than a key forward?
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I mean, the key forwards, they're not kicking the big goals right now, but I don't know. Do you want Sam Taylor or do you want Big Harry at centre half forward? Hodgie.
Taylor.
Yeah.
I'm a defender. You're asking. But you look through that, and I know we had Taylor just signed the big deal. Wiedering's out at the end of next year, as Taylor was. Harris Andrews out at the end of next year. Sam Collins is out at the end of next year. So I know we just saw Taylor with a 7-year deal. I think we're going to see at least those three blokes are going to be offered some big-term deals over the next 12 months, 18 months, because, they've got 18 months left on their deal, the other three blokes.
Well, Harris Andrews was the second highest rated defender in the game up until Sam Collins took over this week. And he's had a very, very tough year given how much ball's been going down there. But he's one that has stood up. But for a 30-gamer, I have never seen a player as competent as a key defender as Mac Andrew.
Yep. As you said, but he backs himself. It looks like he's when you got that much speed and athleticism, I'll back myself as well. I've just been informed that West Coast do play North
They do.
down at Tassie in round 22.
Yeah.
That could be their chance.
They're going to have an absolute eye on who's available in the draft before they decide whether they're going to win that one.
Maybe a year too late.
You don't make the same mistake twice.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question is because there's a dearth of quality key tall forwards, or there's just so many good key defenders, or the way the game's being played now, that intercept defenders are really important to the way the game's played.
I think it's the way the game is. And I think as a forward, as Gerard said, the key forwards aren't kicking the big bags. You look at the Norm Smith last year. Bobby Hill kicked 4 and was the most influential person on the ground. Yep. You look at Rankin, the small half forwards who can chase pressure on. They can kick the 3 or 4 with snaps. They can go into the midfield. They're the type that are really keen. Yes, you do want your key forwards to make a contest, and they'll kick you 4 or 5 a bag every now and then. But the more important ones are your small forwards who can play multiple positions in my eyes.
So speaking of which, Big Ben plays on Big Hattie Mackay on the weekend for the first time in the history of their careers.
It's only Monday, Gerard.
It's only Monday, so it could be a late out. Who is going to win that duel? And don't tell me that he's up against the other king, brother-in-arms.
Surely the coach is going to put him on Curnow.
You would have to have Curnow
surely
squared.
as Ben. This is where umpires, please let it play out. Because if you've got one brother playing on the other, every time he's going to spoil, it's going to be like in the backyard. It's going to be more head than football when you're going for a spoil. So just let it play out. I want to see a good physical battle. It'll be interesting to watch because they've never done it. Whether they've all either been injured or so it'll be intriguing to watch on Monday.
The 85,000 there plus.
No, there'll be more than that.
95?
There'll be more than 90.
Okay.
There'll be more than 90.